you wish to speak, only unmute your Teams device before we begin. But before we proceed, I'll ask Councillor Angus Morrison to lead us in prayer, please.
Lord our God, we thank you for the custom and the privilege that we have that we open our meetings here with a word of prayer. We are indeed privileged to be able to do so, Lord. And we thank you, Lord, as we do so, that we would take away the busyness of the day from our thoughts and our minds for a little while, setting our thoughts and our affections on the things that are above, the things that concern our eternal destination, the things that concern our soul. O Lord, for many are the wonders you have done, the many benefits you have bestowed upon us, Lord. We are truly thankful for them. Even the breath that we get each day, Lord, the thing that we take so often for granted, is a gift given by you. So therefore, Lord, let us take nothing for granted, Lord, for as we know, as we see time flying by, we know that the things that we have here are temporal. They only last for a little while and then they flee away. We are constantly made aware of the brevity of life when we see our fellow beings taken away from the scene of time. But Lord, we thank you that we can come to you at all times for all things, that you are a merciful God and a loving God. And we especially ask for that you would look down upon us as a council at this day, Lord. Each member, each officer, the responsible duties that have been bestowed upon us, Lord. O Lord, we thank you that we are able to uphold these duties, that we do them professionally, humbly in thy sight. All that is done, Lord, the challenges and many challenges that we do face, Lord. We remember our colleagues from SSEN that are present with us this day, Lord. Be with each and every one of them in their own personal lives and in their own duties and their needs also, Lord. We remember any who are concerned at this time for one reason or another. And we especially commend Councillor McKeever at this time to you, Lord, as he may be anxious and awaiting a procedure in coming days. That you would take away the anxiety, Lord, and that he would put his trust and confidence in you, knowing that all things will be done to good. We ask that you remember the many who are less fortunate than we are this day, Lord. Those who are hospitalised, maybe those in care homes, those in differing needs, those who may be suffering from mental health problems or illness of one kind or another. Many different situations in a complex world. But you are the creator of this universe, Lord, and the world. You change not. Let us therefore put our confidence and trust in the Lord Jesus Christ. Go before us now, Lord, and bless the chair and the vice chair and the duties before them, Lord, as they conduct this meeting, that all will be done well. Pardon us freely for our many sins. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison. The meeting is now being recorded. You're all familiar with the procedures in terms of Teams and the microphones. In regard to declarations of interest, members must leave the chamber or end their call remotely. And just to remember that the meeting has been recorded and will be available on the Comhairle's website following the meeting. We have apologies from Councillor Macaulay, and the Chief Executive has asked me to tender his apologies for the first half of the meeting. So we'll move to item 1, the minutes of the meeting of the 26th of November 2024, and there for your approval. Thank you. Item 2, members are asked to declare any interest they have in any items of the agenda. It would be helpful if members express why they're declaring interest in the item concerned. Are there any members declaring interest? I think so. Very good. And now we move to item 3, the SSEN transmission presentation. I'd like to warmly welcome Stuart McPherson and his colleagues, Alison Hall, Callum Wardrop, Ian Clark, Susan Haney and Colin Bell. And they will be delivering a presentation on Western Isles HVDC link project. So I'm just going to hand straight over to yourselves. There's a £10 fine for mobile phones that go off and meet. Was it 20? It's 20. Right. The tariff's going up and up. So, Stuart, do you want to kick off? Oh, Alison. So, okay, Alison. Thank you.
Folks, thanks very much for having us here today. We've got quite a few members of the team here who are going to take us through the work that's been done well, since our last meeting, which is quite a while ago, and since previous consultations on the HVDC link project. But we've also got Susan and Ian here today, who are also going to provide a brief update on some of the other projects that we're working on the island, and those that are used to connect the wind farms to the HVDC link. So I think you've probably all seen this slide before. I'm sure by now you're aware of who we are. We're part of the SSE group, and unlike, I suppose, other developers, wind farm developers or other areas of that group, we are regulated. We're a monopoly, and so therefore we're regulated by Ofgem. So we have many license conditions from Ofgem, but I think some of the key ones to pull out that are relevant to what we do here today are around having a license obligation to provide connections to anybody who requests it, in the same way that our sister company Distribution, if you wanted to build a house, you would hope that they wouldn't pick and choose who they connect to the network, that everybody would be able to get a connection. So we do the same. We have that same license obligation for any developer that comes to our network, and we, as long as they meet the criteria, we make that connection offer. And then I think the second one is really about our license obligation to develop a network that is economic and efficient. Obviously, we're partly funded by the consumers, so all of us here today. So we need to make sure that we can demonstrate to Ofgem that the network that we build is economic and efficient, and that's the balance that the team and we all work with each and every day. So I think that's everything from me, really. I'll hand over to Colin, and he can take you through some of the work we've been doing on the HVDC link project. Thanks.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for inviting us here today to give an update on the West Niles HVDC link project. Again, just to start on this slide, I think it's really just a bit of an overview of the approach we've taken so far in the project. We've got a multidisciplinary team across a number of offices in the mainland, and you've seen a few of us and my colleagues here in previous meetings building that strong relationship with the local communities and local businesses, etc., that we're going to be working with over the next few years to build this project. And that's really key going forward, is that we maintain that strong relationship both within the local community and with yourselves as well, to make sure we can deliver this project with success. And then part of that integrated approach and sort of multidisciplinary approach is the number of key suppliers that we have now working on the project. And we've been engaging with lots of these suppliers over the last year, 18 months, to build up the work scope that we're going to do. And also they're going to be key to working with us and working with yourselves and the local groups to deliver this project. So we cannot go through them all, but a number of key contractors that are going to be working with us to deliver the project as we go forward. To get more specifics on the project update itself, so back in November last year, we had our last of our consultation events, the PAC events that we held at the Caberfay. Between that first one we had back in June and the second one, and since then we've taken on a lot of the feedback on those consultations, and that's influenced how we progress our design of the site and the plans that we're now going to prepare to submit at the end of this month. So the next phase really for us is that consenting phase. We're looking to submit our planning application to the Comhairle at the end of this month, and obviously with your colleagues in the planning and our statutory bodies, that will be reviewed and decided upon over this year. So subject to that consenting being granted, then we'll look to put in place our plans to start work in 2026. Some of the key activities that we're looking to are progressing is obviously get the agreements with the various landowners and access for the site and to develop the work, and also working with your local groups, both in the crofting and sort of the landowners and local businesses, to ensure they've got a robust plan in place for the supply chain. So just touching on some of the feedback that perhaps doesn't show well on the screen there, but on the screen on the map, you can see the kind of wider red line area of our proposed development. And you might question, we're still looking at the area towards the Creed North. Again, this is an area that we're looking hopefully not to use, and this is really for our where we need to potentially have a site for BNG requirements and peat management. But the main work of our site is going to be towards the southern area where you can see the sort of sketch of the layout of the platform itself. And our proposal are really looking to maintain and develop that site and not expand outside beyond that red boundary. So some areas I've had in feedback, relate to how we're going to manage the peat, the impacts on the local environment with the habitats around the River Creed. Clearly, there's going to be light and visual impacts we need to sort of manage and mitigate. A lot of feedback we had from the community groups on how we're going to support community projects and community benefit funds, and Stuart will touch on that later. And obviously looking at some of the local impacts on the road network and sort of access to and from the site and what that means in terms of impact on transport on Eilean, etc. So again, these are all feedback that we've had sort of detailed responses on, and we're now integrating those plans into our EIA and our planning application that we'll submit at the end of this month. So this sketch here on the right gives a bit more detail in terms of the site layout on the Macaulay farmland and the Stornoway Trust land. We're looking to have an access to the site from the main Stornoway Harris Road, and also an access to the site from the Arnish Road. You can see the kind of shaded areas there indicate where we might have temporary laydown areas or storage areas that will be used during construction. But the kind of larger block in the middle is what will be a kind of permanent activity or permanent site area where we'll have the converter station and the AC substation. The blue areas you can see are part of our, again, plans for drainage. Part of what we need to do is planning application to submit an overall site layout that encompasses the drainage and civil works that we need to incorporate into the site layout as well. As part of our planning application, we're looking to submit our land and visual impact assessments, and these are snapshots from some of the visual or local areas where we've taken visual montages of what the site will look like from different locations. It might be hard to see in the top left picture there, but you can maybe see on the horizon of the line there. From Lower Sandwich, you'll be able to see probably the roof line of the buildings from that location. Looking across from Newton, you can see the Harlan Wolf buildings and the structures there across. So we're going to see probably the top of the roof of the buildings behind that area. Again, quite hard to see in the picture, but we're trying to show what that would look like visually. Similarly, from the IO layer, this is from the car park looking across the bay showing there a kind of a relatively clear day, and we'll see the top of the roof line of the buildings from that location. And again, similarly from the Knocknacruick area on the Lewes Castle grounds, that'll be quite a visible, prominent area for us to consider. And again, we'll look to how we can mitigate that visual impact as part of our site development. And similarly, the bottom right picture there is as you approach past the Creed Mrs. Park. Again, these are kind of images we would see, again, quite close to the site, so I would expect that'd be quite prominent. But again, we look at how we can mitigate those visual impacts as part of our overall plans. As I say, with our timeline, we're looking now to submit planning application at the end of this month, subject to those reviews and the discussions, etc., with the planning and the statutory bodies. We then look to sort of start work potentially in the spring of next year, so 2026, to start construction. And with a plan to complete construction by 2029, and the site would effectively be commissioned in 29 into 2030. The two images on the bottom there, again, just give you an overview of the kind of site layout with the buildings that are proposed for the converter station. And also not to forget that we're also building a cable connection across the Minch and underground cable from the landfall site in Dunorrell to the site in Penellan. So again, the parallel works going on in the mainland to install the cable and complete the site works at the Bewley end as well. Okay, I'll just hand over to Stuart, who's going to cover the kind of community benefit schemes.
For lasting and significant community benefit funds for the long term. Following extensive stakeholder engagement, we launched our regional fund in the autumn of last year. This was just an initial fund of £2 million, as we have been waiting for DESNE's guidance on community benefit funds from transmission projects. This initial fund has been heavily oversubscribed, over 300 applicants, and I understand decisions from the independent panel will be public soon. We still await the updated guidance from DESNES, and we do expect community funds in excess of £100 million across our whole transmission area that SSEN transmission covers. We do anticipate there will be a local fund in addition to the regional fund, and as soon as we have the guidance, we will come back and discuss with you. Callum will now talk about housing our workers.
So I'm Callum Wardrop, the Deputy Project Director for the delivery side of the project. So our housing strategy is very much where we hope to accelerate the supply of affordable housing, which would be in addition to that already programmed by the Council. We have worked with the Council to date, which started off as a fairly large and lengthy list of potential accommodation options, which we are still reviewing and refining. We are seeking to leave a positive legacy whilst also housing our workers, and the approach to doing that is fairly multifaceted. So we're looking at options to support permanent housing. We're looking at redeveloping and refurbishing existing properties, assessing the use of underutilised or off-season, off-peak hotel bed spaces and temporary leases, looking at empty homes, looking at if we can support and enable the transfer of properties from short-term lets over to long-term arrangements, and also looking at temporary worker accommodation solutions. We are aware and have been part of ourselves some recent discussions on particular sites that are zoned for housing and were initially presented to us as potentially being suitable for accommodation villages. However, we understand the recent thinking along those, and they are perhaps unfavourable from a temporary village point of view. So we very much hear that and will review internally as part of the kind of wider piece of work to refine our accommodation solutions. Just pass you over to Susan now.
Hi, I'm Susan Haney. I'm the Senior Project Manager working on Colin's team, and I'm looking at the connection projects, so all the other projects apart from the HVDC link. So here's a list of the projects that I'll be going through. I'll quickly go through each one and kind of layer on the project by project so you can see what happens to the network with each project. So next slide. So the current network as it is just now includes the overhead line between Harris and Stornoway, and that's the line that's currently getting replaced at the moment and is due to be replaced. So it started in October 24 and is due to finish in spring 26, and then the dismantling of the existing line will follow. So that overhead line currently ties into the existing Stornoway grid supply point, the substation near Macaulay Farm. So the first project we'll look at is the Ushinish Wind Farm connection and the Eilean switching station. So this project aims to connect the Ushinish Wind Farm and future connections to the transmission network. The scope involves a substation at the Ushinish Wind Farm, 9.5 kilometres of overhead line from Ushinish to Eilean, a new switching station at Eilean. Then we have the new switching station near Eilean, and the reconfiguration. So up at the GSP location, we'll be reconfiguring the overhead line. So instead of tying into the GSP, we'll turn it into the Lewis hub eventually. And we're also currently looking at if any other network upgrades are required to connect Ushinish to the network. Next slide. So we have Stornoway Wind Farm connection. So this is a project to connect Stornoway Wind Farm to the network. We have the substation up at the wind farm, and then 2 kilometres of overhead line to the Lewis hub. We have a public information event on the 20th of March at the Comhairle Hotel, just to go through our selected route for the overhead line. Next one. And then the final project is the Sornoway GSP upgrade. So in order to facilitate connections of renewable energy, including Drumleithen and the Battery Point BESS scheme to the transmission network, we need to upgrade the GSP. So that involves extending the site to accommodate 2 new transformers. And those transformers will then be, there'll be an underground cable to connect those transformers to the Lewis hub. And again, we're going to share some information on that on the 20th of March. Yeah, at the same event as the Sornoway Wind Farm event. And then here's just a brief timeline of our future consultation events, our anticipated planning submission dates, and our construction dates for all the projects, all due to complete in December 2030.
Is that you? Thanks very much, everyone. Just going to open it up now for the members of the committee, of the council. Yes. Any questions? Or yes? Get off with it.
No questions.
Calvin, can I ask about the progress that's been made in terms of, the accommodation requirements for, there's going to be a lot of big workforce coming. Can you give us an update on how you're making progress with that?
Yeah, so we're engaging.
You want to press your...
Yeah. So we are part of the Major Development Forum. I've attended various meetings there, working alongside John. We have brought in our supply chain a lot earlier than we usually do with these projects. So we have our supply chain partners all engaged and working with us on a number of work fronts, accommodation being one of them. So we're very much still working with them on quantifying the number of workers, looking at the construction programme, and when different trades, different disciplines, different subcontractors may be needed on site. And we're working closely with various stakeholders, including local stakeholders, on identifying and then looking at the feasibility, if you like, of the different options, and that, as I said earlier, is a kind of range of options at the moment. Everything from the permanent homes, looking to help facilitate them, through to refurbishing existing properties and temporary villages, etc. So we're narrowing down the list, I think it's fair to say. However, there's still a bit more work to be done before we know for sure the exact sites that we'll use.
Thank you, Carl. Councillor Carl McLean. Hang on, Carl, I'm just trying to get your light on. Who else is?
Thanks, Chair.
No, hang on. Ray, can you put your light up, please?
Off.
Off. That's you, Carl.
Sorry, Ray, I have to confront you again.
No, you don't.
But 2 things. First of all, the first one was that you mentioned that you were to deliver £100 million of community benefit. Now, I take it that was to the full area, but you mean by the full area, the whole area of your responsibility. In other words, the whole of Scotland, the north of Scotland. Have you come to say what percentage of that would be towards the Western Isles? That's the first one.
We still await the guidance from DESNES. The previous Conservative government did have some guidance set out, but with the election and the change of government, DESNES has now reviewed that, and we're told it will be this month, but we've been given a number of dates so far, so we hope it will be this month. And I mentioned at the end of my brief slide that as soon as we have that guidance, we'll come back and talk to you about that.
Yeah. The second one, I think, Chair, you've gone on to it, is accommodation. That is legacy or whatever, a legacy left to the area. You've obviously done some study on this. You've done a bit of work on this. how many workers would you envisage being on the project at its peak time? First of all, and these workers will be here for a short period of time. So you'd need accommodation for them. Are you looking at purpose-built accommodation? Because you're not going to get it from empty homes or from hotel. You're not going to get it in hotels at all, actually. I'll be quite honest with you. So have you looked at siting and at hotel, at worker accommodation in some places? I'm just asking that.
So the short answer is yes, we are looking at providing accommodation at various sites, and the strong legacy aspect is to see if we can provide permanent housing that could be used by our workforce and then passed over, handed over, and used by the community in the longer term. Or so there's various sites that we're looking at that would allow that to progress. And I think the key here is there's a number of options required, a number of solutions required. Off-peak hotel beds is perhaps just one of them. There is other refurbishments that we're looking at and engaging with local stakeholders on as well to assess the viability, the timescales, the commercial aspects of those.
Yeah. Alison, can you?
I'm saying is if you're going to leave legacy housing, now I don't want to, I've just looked around me and see if there's any planners in here, and I don't know if there is on my side here. I don't want to be, but planning housing is not easy and takes time. And I've spoken to somebody even last week who is going through the planning process, and he says it's so timeless. It is really time. So therefore, in order to leave legacy, you'd have to start planning these houses right away. So therefore, if you're talking about 2026 start, have you started with planning, looking at houses?
Oh, you go.
Thanks. I think this is a lesson that we've learned from previous projects, you know, where we have come in, we haven't had the kind of lead up to it. We haven't had potentially our contractors involved as early. We've come in, lots of temporary housing, you know, kind of porta cabin stuff in a big field, build all that, take it all away. We realize that we will be paying to accommodate people, and we would like to be able to use that money in a more sensible way, or a more you know, a way that's going to be able to leave a legacy. So I think what we're saying is, and what's been really great about the Western Isles, excuse me, is that we've been working really, excuse me,
Have some water.
we've been working very closely with the council since well before when we came here for our very first update. So we look with local housing associations on the list of what has been zoned, and you know what already potentially has planning or has been zoned for planning. So we are working really closely, but I think we all need to be aware that it's a mix. You're right. We don't want to come here and build 300 houses, because that wouldn't be a legacy. That would be a waste, right? So some of it will be legacy housing that will be useful, hopefully useful to the people, you know, to the community. But some of it will also have to be temporary, because like you say, that peak worker numbers of, you know, up to 300, well, that, you know, that can't be accommodated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ray McKenzie, next.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad Callum got in ahead of me, because he's asked almost everything I wanted to know. So you've been working with the housing department and HHP presumably for some time, maybe. So the other thing was the numbers, and you said 300 was the maximum. The 300 is the maximum number you have working or having to accommodate. Is that correct?
I think at the moment we're still refining that number, but it is in that ballpark. But yeah, we're still looking and working at that with our contract partners. There's a number of variables, their subcontractors, the construction programme, any overlap of trades, etc. So it's fair to say there's a bit more pre-construction activities to go on. Yeah.
Yes, certainly, Alison.
Thank you. Just to add to that, you know, we're here talking about a kind of a number of projects as well. There are the smaller projects that Susan and Ian are looking after, but we're able to take a much more coordinated view of that so that we're not kind of looking for accommodation for that and then looking for accommodation for something else. So, with it all being within this one team and within my directorate, then we're able to take a more strategic view to make sure that we're accommodating everybody and hopefully be able to kind of eke out those peaks so that it's less peaky, because that's difficult to cope with from our point of view, the contractor's point of view, and a community point of view as well. So we're looking to try to smooth that out.
Okay, thank you. Calvin, do you want to come back?
Yeah, just
Carry on, Pez.
it was just to touch on the point around the 2026 start, so that there is an increase over the first sort of 6 to 12 months of construction as well. So we don't need those numbers, if you like, from day one. There is a bit of a ramp up. So looking at the solutions, that provides a smaller number of beds, if you like, and they can maybe facilitate that first year on site, 2026.
Thank you. Councillor Angus McCormick. Then
Thank you
Malcolm.
very much indeed, Chair, and thank you very much for your presentations. You've obviously moved on significantly since last we met. And I realise that what you're now trying to do is to present to us a situation that would be more amenable to this committee, but also at the back of my mind is the community. And despite the fact that you've had these two public presentations in the Comhairle Hotel, which were very useful indeed, I thought, a great many people members of the public didn't attend these. And there are all sorts of stories flying around, particularly in my own area of Sandwick. There are all sorts of stories flying about what you are planning to do and not do. And I myself, I'm not 100% clear. Maybe you are not 100% clear of exactly what that's going to mean as yet. And there have been meetings where there's been outright condemnation of the fact that you are thinking of doing anything anywhere sort of idea, and I understand that people have concerns, and it's our task therefore to allay these concerns as best we can. And so you are still in the situation where you don't know definites, and I think that's a problem for us, and it's going to be an ongoing problem until you know really what your definite situation is. And the other thing at the back of my mind is you are talking about your needs, but then we've got Lewis Wind Power's needs and Oceanish needs, and the offshore companies' needs. So there is a big multiplier which might be associated with your needs. And I'm just wondering, I know that you're all meeting together from time to time, to what extent you're going to come up with a plan which accommodates everybody's needs in terms of housing, because presumably at certain peak times we may well have over 1,000 people on this island working on these different projects. How do we accommodate that without upsetting how our island continues to work? We are expecting in the future, starting possibly it even started last summer, that our tourism industry is going to just expand exponentially. And you're going to be working at the time when all of that is happening. And that is possibly going to place constraints both on you and on the tourism businesses. And I'm wondering just exactly how you are likely to accommodate all of that. The overall disruption over the next few years in Lewis and Harris in particular is going to be significant. And so I'm going to suggest to you that £100 million is buttons, and that you really need to go away and think again about that particular number. And I know it's not necessarily in your gift, but the disruption that we are going to have in the next few years is going to be more than we have ever had before. And I cannot imagine a community anywhere else where this kind of disruption has affected them so radically over an extended period of time. I think I mean, you are already, as far as I'm concerned, you're already demonstrating your intent to try and do the best for us that you possibly can. I want you to be more ambitious, personally. I would like you to be more ambitious. And I would like you, as soon as you possibly can, to talk to the community about exactly what is going to happen in terms of accommodation. There are all sorts of stories going around about the kind of accommodation it's going to be and where it's going to be. And if you could be more positive about these locations, that would be extremely helpful from my perspective, personally as a councillor.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. Who wants to take that? Alison?
Firstly, thanks for your kind words, Councillor. I'm glad that you found the information events and the consultation events useful. We do use those, and we understand that not everybody has the time or the means or the inclination, I suppose, to come down to those events. So we do. There's information available on our websites, and there's information leaflet drops and that kind of thing that we do to affected areas. But you're right. We don't have the answer to everything right now, and that is part of the process. Hopefully, you can see the progress that we've made to date. And I think a key thing to say about the information that we've shown you today, and that the information that will be at the events coming up and in the planning submission, is that that is a worst case. Things are only going to get, excuse me, because it's planning in principle, we expect the building sizes to decrease potentially, and for things to, so hopefully we have, from that point of view, looked at the worst case, or I know we have looked at the worst case for that. But on the point around other developers, you're right. We can only influence what we have control of. We really welcome the Major Projects Forum, the council run. It's really useful, and I think we need to drive that kind of coherent view or total view through that forum. We find that we have our information, and we try to be as open as possible within that forum, and we need to make sure that everybody is doing the same thing there, because that's the only way that we can see what the big picture is and then understand what we can do about it. And we understand that concerns from your local constituency, and that's why we included some of the visualizations from Sandwich, so we could hopefully ally some of those fears about the visual impact. And as Callum says, we are working really closely with the council around the areas that we're looking at for housing. I think we do need to accept, though, that there will be some temporary housing required, because of the numbers we're talking about. And, we don't, like we discussed before, we don't want to build that many houses, because then you'd just be left with them sitting empty and that kind of thing. So, there will be a requirement for some kind of temporary housing. And we will do that as sensitively as we can, and accepting feedback as we are already on those plans.
Okay, thank you, Alison. Councillor Malcolm MacDonald.
Thank you,
Sorry, Malcolm. That's you.
Thank you for your presentation and consultations with the public over the last few months. I don't want to repeat myself, apart from to repeat Councillor McCormack's request for casino-type community paybacks. Apart from that, there was one aspect, I don't want to repeat what others have said, is I heard overhead lines from the Stornoway wind farm, yes. And that's the first I've heard of it, and it's in my ward. And I would like to know whether there's been consultation up till now, or has there been consideration given to having underground lines rather than overhead? Because I think we've got enough overhead with the actual wind farms themselves. Thank you.
Sorry, that's you.
We haven't done any consultation yet because of the stage of the project. So we're way behind the HVDC project, and maybe about a year and a half. So we've just established, we had 3 possible routes for the overhead line. We've selected a route. It's a very short route, so the possibilities were quite narrow. In terms of cabling, there will be some cable. It won't be overhead line all the way. We'll stop short of the road before it reaches the Lewis hub. But we do intend to overhead line to that point due to the mainly due to the peat. So having the cable in then peat isn't technically good. I'll maybe let Ian explain that more.
So yeah, we have to look at the ground conditions and establish what we can build for that connection and for any connection. Heavy peat, wet peat is extremely challenging for cables and cable installation. We've had recent challenges in other projects trying to achieve that. Both management of water, management of peat, management of hillsides, and it does present a lot of challenge to us. We also then have sort of operations, maintenance challenges with underground cables. If we do get faults on them, it's extremely difficult to find the exact location of the fault. An overhead line is quite straightforward to walk the line and find the fault, which is why the network, distribution, etc. prefer overhead lines. We can deal with things quite quickly and fix broken wires, jumpers, etc. in a storm. So we will obviously look at the benefits of each option as we do the assessment and look at how we can make the route best fit into the landscape, least impact on local community and stakeholders as well.
Thanks, Ian. Councillor John Norman MacLeod, your hand was up earlier online. Don't know if you wanted to come in or not. If not, I'll take in Councillor Francis Murray. Sure.
It's me, thank you very much. Really following on from Councillor McCormack's point about us being asked by people in the community who maybe haven't been to the events and are opposed, or even if they're not opposed. I thought that was a really useful presentation. I didn't have time to peruse it all as we went through it. Will there be an opportunity for us to have that presentation sent to us so we're able to be forewarned and forearmed with some of that information?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say as well, we have a community liaison person, it's on island. He is available for anybody. Lift the phone, drop an email, or any of you that get questions that you need an answer to for your constituents, you can reach out to him. He's kind of available, knows about all the projects, the ones that in the, the overhead line replacement that's in construction at the moment, and has reached back into all of the teams. So he's definitely a resource that you guys should be, tapping into, I think, as well.
Thank you. Councillor Donald McSween now.
My question is probably a little bit along the lines of what Councillor McCormack was talking about earlier in terms of the impact. A lot of people, a lot of materials, a lot of equipment. You're not going to be relying solely on CalMac to transport all this, are you? So how are you going to minimise the impact on the community from this side of things? And I appreciate we're picking up on the negatives here. I think I have to say in general supportive of this project and the impact that it will have, but kind of mitigate the concerns that will undoubtedly arise.
You're absolutely right. We definitely can't rely on CalMac to deliver this project by 2030. I think. Sorry, I need to be careful what I say. So again, like housing, there's money to be spent getting things here, right? So we would love to use the opportunity to be able to bolster the services to the island. Like the Shetland Islands, they have a dedicated freight service. We would love to see a dedicated freight service here, and if our works could enable something like that. So actually there's a meeting with the Transport Secretary and the CEO of, I've already, had meetings with the Fiona Hislop Transport Secretary. We have a meeting this afternoon actually with the CEO of Transport Scotland, to really put these things on their agenda. So we are, if we can enable some of that, that's great, but we can also look at, if you like, independent logistics as well. So that's what's in the mix there.
Thank you. Sorry, Ian. Or Colin.
No, I think I'll just again add to the discussion there, and I think we are engaging. We've had Kevin, who is our communities manager. He's been engaging with sort of some of the local community groups, and we encourage identifying who the other groups are. We need to talk to, whether it's Sandwick or Melbourne communities, etc. We're having those engagements now, and that will continue to happen. So we welcome those opportunities to share and have those discussions. I think equally as well, we're looking certainly in the next month to have a supplier event here in Stornoway where local businesses and local employment opportunities will be able to meet with some of our key suppliers. And then part of that whole delivery of the project is not just to rely on some of the key contractors that we identified earlier, but where we can utilise local businesses and local supply chain to support the project, whether it's through construction activities or welfare or I mean, providing sort of local services, amenities, etc. That's all part of the mix we need to get right for make sure we can deliver the project on time.
Thanks, Colin. Councillor Finlay-Stewart.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm not a member of your committee, and thank you for the presentation. It's regarding accommodation, and I was just wondering if accommodation barges have been considered. Having seen them working up, I was working in Shetland, and there's a large amount of contractors working at Sillamvo, and there was accommodation barges in there which worked quite well. It's something that wouldn't have a lot of impact on, for planning or for building or for taking away. You just kind of tow them in and tow them back out when the job's done. I was just wondering if that's something that's been looked at or thought about.
So I actually was on some of those Shetland projects that you referred to and lived in some of those barges. I think it's maybe fair to say they're not as simple to arrange and bring to the kind of various locations, particularly things like sort of utilities connections. We're not actively looking at them at the moment. We're kind of see various opportunities, as we discussed earlier, around leaving kind of lasting legacies around permanent housing, refurbishments, etc. So that is very much our focus at the moment and working with our supply chain on it.
Thank you. And I'll ask now Councillor Angus Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few observations and a few comments, if I may. I mean, first of all, I'd like to commend Kevin Morrison and your team for his community engagement work. He's been absolutely brilliant as far as our ward is concerned. And I see Susan's quickly got an engagement in her ward. I saw an invite come in yesterday to one of the community councils, so it's good to see that work going on. It's also good to see that we've moved forward quite a bit since and I think it's been referenced to already since we last met with you in here when there was so much negativity about the site, and we've moved on a long way since then. On one of the concerns I do have though is with the new site is the access to the main road on the 859. I travel that road every day, and I noticed when they were doing samplings and site tests at Macaulay Farm there was quite a delay with traffic at times, and I know that's early beginnings. So I just wondered, are you in dialogue with the roads team here to try and see if we can improve the road structure there and the opening, because it is quite a bad opening there. Another bad opening just beyond Macaulay Farm, so we've got two bad entrances coming off the main road, which is going to impact your building, and it'll be good if there was some kind of dialogue and something could be done to the roads there. And while we're on the roads, I just wonder, is there any possibility of getting community benefit released to the roads team in the council in advance of all this work some of the work's already taking place with the overhead lines. There's heavy transport on the Lochs Road particularly. And I think they could do an injection of money to improve part of that road, rather than when the horse is bolted, when we do look at it later on. I think it needs the money now. And any money we could get on that community benefit side to assist the roads team would be greatly welcomed and appreciated. My other question was to Susan, possibly on the overhead line side, which is developing well in the Harris area at the moment. I take it's the same project we're talking about, the one that's ongoing just now.
You want to pick your Michael?
I'm actually not the project manager on that project, but I'm happy to take questions away, or if there's any comments I can take to the.
It was just when Councillor MacDonald mentioned about there was no community engagement or consultation with the project. The project is well on in that area, from my understanding. And it's good to see that it has progressed to the extent that it has, given we're over the winter period. My question really is on the taking away the old poles from the old network. My understanding from community discussion was that they're not going to be cut at ground level. They're going to have to be excavated and pulled out. Is that correct?
I would have to check that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, typically the poles have got probably about 2 metres below ground, and they'll have some form of bracing across them, timber bracing or metal bracing when they've been buried. So yeah, we'd have to look to excavate down to remove them, because obviously the wood could decay over time and create a safety issue. So yeah, we would look to go in and remove them fully.
Yeah, thanks for that. And my final point was going to be on the housing. On one of your sites at the Ushnish development is in the park area, which I represent. That's a very fragile community regarding housing, and it comes up obviously, and Mr. Watson's present today as well from the housing manager. It's an area that's screaming out for development for homes, and if there was any modular homes, I'm sure the Park Trust would welcome discussion. You may have been in discussion already with them, but it is a very fragile community, and anything we can get in that area is welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Watson. Who wants to take Councillor Cullen?
It's a good time of discussion there. I think we've actually had sort of conversations with the members of the Park Trust this morning, and I think we'll look to have further engagement as we progress these projects and the development, certainly with the Park Estate and the developer, Eurowind, to look to how we can have sort of common ground there in terms of developing a solution that works for the local area. So we'll continue those discussions, and I certainly can report back on that.
What about the new road he's wanting?
Yeah, so I think I was just going to add as well, I think on the question around the road access into the site around the Macaulay Farm, we are aware of the kind of the challenge there of flood risk and the kind of access turning off the road into the site. So again, part of what we need to look at is what public road improvements we can make in that area as part of our development, as well as increasing space or additional lanes for pedestrian or cycling traffic as well as kind of motorised vehicles on the main road. So that's part of our look at what we can do to improve that sort of access into the site and egress from the site.
Very briefly, Mr. Mills.
But I'll come back in now.
Okay.
No, just following on from that comment. I mean, I welcome that from the road point of view, because the Ushnish Wind Farm, one of the community benefits that they have put in is a 700,000 contribution to a payment through the village of Eilean and Laxey. But that's only going to be released when the wind turbine is actually operational. So anything that could be done in advance to assist that and to move it, it would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor John Allman, MacLeod, online.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies. I could hear.
You're muted, John.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
We'll come back to you at the end.
Aye,
John Allman.
We're
having problems with it.
Development in Tulsa. And I didn't see, did I see anything on that? John, maybe John A saw it, but I didn't. I didn't see anything to do with Tulsa. There's a line, there must be a line coming from Tulsa, because there is a 49 megawatt development in Tulsa, and I didn't see anything about it.
Yeah, okay.
Did I miss it?
It wasn't in the presentation.
No, I didn't think so.
No. Alison.
Thanks. So as transmission, we only connect kind of bigger projects, if you like. So those smaller projects would be what we call distribution connected. And those are the type of projects that feed into our infrastructure at these GSPs, the grid supply points, like the one near the arena there and opposite the site. So like Susan was talking about, there's an upgrade for that GSP planned so that it can accommodate more distribution connections, if you like. But that kind of line would be a lower voltage, a distribution voltage line, if that's the connection. So not a different team, not us.
Thank you, Alison. John Norman, are you online now? Can you unmute yourself?
I think so. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, yes, that's you.
Right. Thank you. Apologies. I don't know what was going on there. Thanks for the presentation. Just a quick question, a couple of quick questions. You mentioned usage of the Arnish Road. Is that likely to be used a lot in the development? And also, I'm not sure if you probably realize it's starting. They're going to start doing a new road there April this year, but that's not likely to be finished till the end of 26. So if you're planning to start in 2026, there could be a bit of an overlap there. Thank you.
Colin. Sorry, Colin, I can't get someone got that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So yeah, we're working with or closely with the Stornoway Port Authority to look at their plans and the timeline for their construction of the Arnish Road upgrade. But yes, we look to optimise where we can, moving materials or equipment into the deepwater port and transporting that to the site from that side of the bay. So again, we're working with the port to look at how that will, their plans to construct the road in 2 phases, and what that would mean for our kind of access to the site over that period as well. So we're well aware of those plans and sort of need to develop that further.
Okay.
Alison,
Thank you.
do you want to come in, Sue?
And we're actually using an opportunity for those works, because you know everybody hates beautiful new road, and then somebody comes along and digs up a big trench to put a cable in it. So we're hoping that our cable ducting will be able to be put in that road whenever they're doing those works. And Colin's working really closely with the Port Authority on that, so that then we don't have to come back and dig up the same section of road to put our duct in. So we're working really closely with them.
Thank you, Alison. So we'll have our last question from the Vice Chairman, Councillor Norrie MacDonald.
Yeah, thanks again for the presentation, guys. I think my points are pretty general across the Comhairle itself. Between now and 2030, when we're going live with this, there are a huge amount of jigsaw pieces to put together in the whole picture. We've touched upon some of them here. Councillor McCormack mentioned the ongoing effect of booking accommodation. Now, you guys will be working in your own silo, and all the other contractors will be working in their own silos. I don't know, is there anything to stop anybody going on and block booking accommodation? Now, any accommodation provider would be grateful to get 3 or 4 or 5 year surety of income over the next couple of years. The knock-on effect of that could be that we're, as Angus pointed it out, the knock-on effect of that could be on our tourism industry, which has just recovered from COVID. So we could end up in a situation where nobody can get accommodation on the islands because various subcontractors have taken long-term block bookings out over a number of years. You also touched on the fact that access to and from the island, given Caledonia, McBrain and Logan Air's limited operational, well, they've been strategically stressed over the last couple of years, shall we say. We're just going to add to that just now because there'll be lots of people coming on and off the island. We need to bring in lots of supplies, lots of kit, etc. Discussions need to be ongoing with Caledonia, McBrain, Stornoway Pier and Harbour Authority, who are building Deepwater 2, plus the road coming in from Arnish as well. So all of these are part of the greater jigsaw. The ongoing effects of having between 500 to 1,000 people on the island, subbies, mostly male, mostly, I would imagine, mostly away from home, working here. We've already spoken about this, and again, it goes across the whole Comhairle. I'm chairman of the licensing board, so I'm well aware of what the knock-on effects of having 800 males looking for somebody to do at the weekend could be. We don't have a huge policing presence on the islands at the moment. We've talked about this as well over the years, so we need to have ongoing discussions with Police Scotland about what could potentially be situations we might arise because of that. Now, all of this sounds negative. Councillor MacDonald spoke about casino-type benefits. Now, if anybody knows anything about casinos, they're not there to give money to the general public. They're there to make money for the casinos. I'm not suggesting that you're operating in a similar vein. One person might win big occasionally. You know, you might buy off the odd trustee on the west side, possibly with maybe generous donations. But we want to ensure at the end of this process that we've got a legacy and we've got ongoing benefits that we can spread across the whole of the Western Isles. So, you know, the whole thing We need to manage it to a conclusion, and there needs to be an outcome that represents best value for you, best value for all the other subcontractors, and best value for us at the end of the day. So it's going to be a long journey, and we need to manage it carefully, which is why we have a major development forum. So we need to work together to ensure that at the end of the day, you know, we've got something that benefits every single person with a minimum disruption, and that everybody goes away happy. But that's probably not going to be the case. There are going to be pitfalls along the way, but at the end of the day, let's hope we can manage this for the best outcomes for us all.
Thanks, Norman. Mustafa, very, very briefly. It's the last question.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a quick question. We were talking about legacy. Have you thought about some apprenticeships or some educational, you know, something to leave behind when you have the workforce to tie in with the local schools and just something? That would be some legacy that to leave behind.
Carl?
Yeah, absolutely. And not just ourselves, our supply chain partners as well. So it's something we're working on with them, your Balfour BTs, RJ McLeod's, Linkson, etc. So yeah, we hope to be able to report more on that soon and certainly engage. I think there's some major development forums, subgroups around those topics as well. So yeah, absolutely looking to provide those apprenticeships and jobs.
You want to come back? Okay, just
some of the feedback we took from our previous meeting and, you know, ongoing engagement has been around, I suppose, fuel poverty and that kind of thing. And what Nora discussed there, the spreading of benefit and making sure that everybody benefits from this. So Stuart and the team have worked hard in the background to arrange a meeting. I think it's on the 7th of May with Ofgem, the NESO, so the energy system operator, they're coming as well. So kind of the people who make these decisions, if you like, and that we're at the behest of. So they're coming here. So hopefully you can all prepare your questions. You know, it really helps if you can all make your case for island communities. It helps back up instead of us just saying, you know, this is what we need, this is what they need, we want to leave a legacy. They hear it from you. I think that's really useful. So be really keen to get some good attendance and contribution to that meeting as well. And well done for Stuart for managing to get them all to come here as well. So
very good, Alison. Thank you. And we look forward to continuing ongoing dialogue with you all. And thanks for your attendance here today. It's very much appreciated. And thank you, members, for your questions. Very informative. So you're free to leave.
Thank you.
Okay, see you soon. Levasin is a cwasyd cwsbar y ceir, cochonige realtas na rionach uniche ripun structure jawan. En als je hier een kabel die flakkert, cochonige realtas rioch uniche, heeft ripun structure jawan an an awape, sa brini ian conican dische en ask is frakida kistjen se biakev. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. It's a UK government consultation on reviewing the electricity infrastructure consenting system in Scotland. The England and Wales have been reviewed to speed up the process, and this is going to be reflected in this proposal for the Scottish system. We've made a response which is appended to the report. The response was due between committee dates, so we're asking members to homologate what we've said. But basically, we're making the point that there should be stronger community engagement recorded and enforceable before applications. Any planning fees that come in on this should come to the planning authority, not to the government. The planning service should be adequately resourced to deal with these large applications. And I think the most contentious point in the consultation is to do with the removal of the right to a public inquiry. And that has implications for the local authority. If for example, the coroner decides to object to a large project in the future, normally that would trigger an automatic public inquiry with all the transparency and the rigour and the accountability of that. The proposal here is to save time and expense for government, that should change to a reporter's decision on the application. So it's not as transparent, it's not as comprehensive as a public inquiry. So we'd question the wisdom of doing that. If that happened to the Comhairle, we would then be forced down the route of legal challenge at our own expense. So it would be quite a challenging situation for a small local authority. The other points are any variations to a planning application should only be granted as variations if they are non-material. If they are material, it should be a resubmission of application. And just a final point that planning is often blamed for everything, but delays aren't always the fault of planning. There can be slow response from consultees, which lengthen our decision times. So it's not always the fault of planning. But we're presenting the response for committee and Comhairle approval and to submit that retrospectively. Thanks, Chair.
Bereits die Kirchenprojekte in Hüspasho, Comhairle Francis Morroch.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thank you for this, Mr. Cunningham. I think I would agree with you that the contentious issue of the suggestion of removing the right to a public inquiry is something that we have to stand up to, and I'm very pleased to see the response there. Obviously, it's well documented and publicised that the UK government are very keen on trying to rush things through, but I think that the possibility of a feeling of a community really being disenfranchised by removing that right to a statutory right to a public inquiry process is one that really has to be resisted. And I just wanted to particularly mention that point, and I'm glad to see your response there.
Bereits Commissioner Morroch. Commissioner Mechanisch, Royce, Curious, Jack.
Does GB Energy actually produce any energy? That's the first question. And is it still the case that electricity costs are lower in the southeast of UK, England, basically, and in Scotland, which was described last night on Panorama as the powerhouse production area?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chair, we have a GB Energy item coming next, so we can get into a bit of detail on that. It's not an energy supplier, but we can get into the detail on the next item. And Councillor Mackenzie is correct. Charges are cheaper the closer you are to generation, which has historically been fossil fuel near the cities. Electricity is cheaper. As you move further away, your charges are locational premium or surcharge, which we have here in the Highlands and Islands. It was 10% over the rest of the nation. It's now 5%. So there is a considerable uplift the further away you are from historical generation. As Councillor Mackenzie said, we are now becoming the powerhouse. So there's a case to be made for reversing that whole system. It should be cheaper where historically it's been cheaper where power is produced. That principle should be respected if the Highlands and Islands become the powerhouse. So we should have cheaper electricity, and those at distance should be paying more. But that, I don't suppose that would ever happen, Chair.
I never know. Thank you.
Come back on that. I understand what you say, but logically, why should it not happen?
It's just a regulatory interest with entrenched, embedded generators with vested interests would lose out significantly if that switched round. And these are the people who put through code reforms. They have to agree unanimously to reforms to the code, so it's very challenging.
Okay, Commissioner News McCormack.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm very happy with Mr. Cunningham's report. Thank you very much for it. The one thing that I would like to highlight from your paragraph 2.2 is the statement that you make, government should be resourcing the planning service to an adequate level where planning authorities face an increase in major project applications. We're currently looking as a council at funding that by using Crown Estate monies, which means that the communities are losing out in that, and we shouldn't be having to do that. I wondered, Chair, maybe you've already done this yourself, or perhaps the leader, if you have not written a strongly worded letter, shall we say, to the government to insist that they support us. We're going to have huge problems for our planners if we don't get them some support.
Hashin yw'r sy'n ianw gan y treithrapen le lichter as biaw minister gyda ach hannig ian as arne rysio priaf officer planner son awabe in hechon sio as fyd i etyn bysloch y chod gain cymryd a chasyn.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We have, as Chair says, we've pressed government repeatedly over the years, but there seems to be no cash resource from government. The Chief Planner, Dr. Fiona Simpson, and Cara Davidson, Head of Unit, visited us last week. We had a very productive discussion about the pressure on the local planning service. But what they see unfolding is that the new planning hub that the government is going to fund, separate from funding planning, will provide assistance to each local authority. So our particular pressure is getting consultation responses from specialists. We don't have a biodiversity officer anymore. We struggle to get comments on transport on various aspects because there's so much pressure on the council's own resources. So what this hub is going to do is employ or recruit specialists who can give us these responses, competent responses, quite quickly. And that is going to speed up our processes and take a lot of weight off our own team. So I think Sian and will agree it was a very productive meeting and some real commitment from them to help us.
Okay.
But that doesn't, Chair, take away the need for us to have more planners, does it?
Members have kindly, through the HR subcommittee, released a post-major projects planner who will be dedicated to these large projects. It is regrettably funded from Crown Estate money and from various other internal sources, but that is going to help. And we think that with the support from the hub, we should be able to manage in the short term. But as projects ramp up, we will be looking for additional resources.
Thank you very much, Chair. I really do think that the Scottish Government should be giving us a significant, I mean, the developments in these islands over the next few years is going to be very, very significant. And we really do need all the help we can get.
Commission Plutergat. Leva, and a Mawin 3 point Gahun is on Unterge. Papalai. Kusper Core Committee Cushion Albanoch, Ek Parliament, a Rioch Uniture. Hanais is cavalry flickert Cohonige, Committee Cushion Alba Riotus Rioch Uniture, a herb Iratus Fionish GB Energy, as Guaset Guan Ek Ira Njoni. Sir Rees be Ian Connick and a Brinish Nash is Flagria Kish to be.
Thanks, Chair. The Scottish Affairs Committee visited us on the 10th of December. We had a productive session with them, presented the various challenges and opportunities we have locally. That coincided with a call for evidence from the committee on GB energy and the net zero transition. So we made a presentation and the committee basically asked us to change that into a submission to their call for evidence, which we subsequently did. We made a series of observations and asks which are in the appendix to this report. And the key messages were round about oil and gas transition. There was a perception that the transition out of oil and gas might not affect us as much as it affects other areas. But we're making the point here that we have a disproportionate number of employees in the oil and gas diaspora who are returning significant amounts of money to families here in the islands and sustaining services. So they need to be reskilled for renewables, and there needs to be government support for reskilling and for infrastructure development. We wanted to see more investment in West Coast infrastructure. Offshore wind is slowly moving around from North Sea to the West Coast. The only facilities at the moment are Kishorn and Arnish, possibly Hunterston. We need to see some ahead of time investment in these facilities, and it's noting the regret we had that the Deepwater South 2 was refused support from the FLOMAS UK government fund. So we noted that with them and asked them to invest more in facilities to the west. Talked about the potential for Western Isles to become leader in hydrogen production and also how the Western Isles is really leading the UK in terms of community energy and community ownership of energy. And on that point, we made a specific ask that GB Energy should establish a division in the Western Isles that would cover community-owned energy and hydrogen production, because we feel we're ideally placed to deliver that on behalf of the nation. So the response is there as an appendix, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes.
Thanks, Chair. Again, I'm not a member of your committee. Can I say that this submission, Sean, is excellent. I've read it through a couple of times, and it brings out exactly where we are. The thing that comes out here is in item 4. It's number 4. You mentioned there that at the end of that, the islands will have to suffer. If we don't get something, we have to suffer the considerable disbenefits associated with hosting offshore wind deployment, and you mentioned that. If we don't get something tangible, and I looked back at the member officer working group in energy, and I was disappointed, Chair, to say that we only had one meeting last year, and we only had one meeting in 2023. And if ever we had to up our game, it's now. Now is the time, actually. I said that, I think, over a year ago, if not more, that we must get as much out of what's coming. And Mr. McCormick and I discussed that already today. We must get some benefits out of it. Now, how we get the benefit, we cannot get the benefit, obviously, through cheap electricity. We're told that. Is that correct?
No. Too many lights on.
Sorry.
Yeah, indirectly, we hope to get discounted electricity. We can't get it direct from turbine to home.
Yeah.
But there are ways to work it through the system where we should get a discount.
Now, one way, and I suggested before, and I've suggested some of the officers, is could we have a fund put in from the developers into the Comhairle, so that the Comhairle could distribute that fund out to householders, i.e. in the form of a discounted council tax? It's just a thought that I've been having. Could we, in other words, you put the fund, money from the developers into a fund that would then, the Comhairle could take that as payment for council tax, and then reduce the council tax of every householder in the Western Isles. That's from Butt to Barra. Could we do something like that?
I don't know, Mr. McLean.
I'm just asking.
Perhaps it's something that the Energy now could look at, and maybe the chairman can give an indication we're gonna organise a meeting soon.
Cumant yn y cwniwn, Sean, a tor cwniwn eled efo gwa laat. Di lein, a tor edrych fi tachart. Gaharad cumant di, yn a sy'n dal i anu TV, agos ha mi tot molach Sean Cunningham y Sean ffrogwtad o'ch ydy sio, agos ydych chi'n sy'n di gwach di, dyn y sio, agos ydych chi'n sy'n gael budget, ti'n mi gilydd 8 billion ar ôl y gyna. Agus sylw mi gymiga ymach y gylor, gais yn torsio gyda'n nawch gan y heilan. Agus torsio y cwrach dyn ys y heilan. Agus Sean, dim yn y yw bonoch coinstoch gymgorhod ymach ys y sym ar gyda ha. Agus nad ich alles sy'n ys y ffrogod a sio, nördes ar y gianw le HIV agus y gwal ffihyd sy'n hiad de chorm miljoen gaya tahart huis al juist show agus in de lia dorte de schon ik zie nog eens gemoord kom ik nog meer kanstukje is schon schon budget ker kumatli Ojonelle committee her sin het fin fistige get en op het hangole gesofike den het witjanu stuies a hole schon kruchig nog kan a company en ha op het chemical show ach wins gemoor agus premierna hutch die John schon Comhairle gan meuga bhí ann. Ach, a tóir ghála ag gúlgúsin agus a tóir Comhairle bhí ghála.
Tapelets. Only, sorry?
None there.
Well,
And I'm just looking
needs to
for
be a meeting.
that is the purpose of the MOG,
and
it's not been meeting.
Okay. Mr. McCormick?
Thank you very much, Chair. Again, I think this is an excellent report and very comprehensive. And I, of course, I'm absolutely delighted with the emphasis on community wind farms. It's something very dear to my heart. And I like the idea of having a headquarters here in the Outer Hebrides. I think that'd be an ideal thing to do. And we have led the way across the islands. We have led the way in community wind power. And I wonder whether in taking that particular issue forward, it might be appropriate to add a further action onto the report in that we, perhaps with the assistance of CPOH, compile a list of all of the communities in our islands, throughout our islands, who are looking to build wind farms in the future. And there are many of them. And some of the existing wind farms I know are seeking to enhance the size of the wind farms they have themselves. Now, at the moment, they haven't a chance of getting onto the grid. And they all know that, and that's why they're not doing anything about it. But what I would like to suggest is that we prepare a list and we encourage every one of these wind farms to apply to the grid for a place on the grid, so that the grid then knows and the government knows exactly what our aspiration is in terms of community wind farm. And if we were the headquarters for this, that would be a very good way to start off. And I know, Chair, that there are areas first of these islands who are looking at the production of electricity from community wind farms, and they are asking our local wind farms for assistance on how to do it. So we've got the nucleus of the knowledge, and I would love to see that built up here and taken forward, if that was a possibility.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. Is there any other member wanting to contribute? Comhairle Cogunion Somalian ag 3 point sonundag. Now, members, I have to leave early to attend another meeting, unfortunately, that I can't avoid. So the Vice Chairman is going to take the meeting from this item on at item 6, housing. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Move on to item 6 on the agenda just now. Report by the Chief Planning Officer. This report seeks to provide the Comhairle with an update on the development of the proposed strategic housing investment planship for the period 2025-26 to 2030-31. John Cunningham and Ian Watson are available to speak to the report and answer any questions.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. You're probably aware that we are a wee bit out of sync with the preparation of our annual strategic housing investment plan this year. That's due to a number of reasons, one being staff illness last year, where we weren't able to follow the normal timelines for that. Normally, we'd be presenting this report to you in September and then for onward submission to Scottish Government in October. The other thing that has brought about this change in timetable is that the Scottish Government haven't been in a position to inform councils about the resource planning assumption for the coming years. That's the amount of funding that could be made available to a local authority to develop affordable housing. And the other key issue has been the work that has gone on to do with the housing requirement for the renewable projects, as we've heard earlier this afternoon. So following discussions with the Scottish Government and with Hebridean Housing Partnership, the Scottish Government asked us if we could prepare a one-year SHIP. So this is very much a holding SHIP just now. So the first year of the SHIP, this coming financial year, sets out what we'd like to see developed by HSP throughout the islands and other developers. And the other years are very much an indicator of what could be delivered if a similar amount of funding was made available to us. But we won't know that until later on in the spring. So once we do get that information, we will be working with our various partner agencies to develop the SHIP further. So we'll have a 5-year programme being presented to you in September, and then that will be submitted to the Scottish Government in October. But for again, like I mentioned, this is very much a holding SHIP. The appendix sets out the narrative of the kind of operating environment we have to work in, as well as some of the key factors we take into account when preparing a SHIP. It's a very similar document to what you've seen in previous years, so you should be familiar with that. The very last page of the appendix is actually a table setting out what could be developed over the next 5 years. But again, I've just emphasised it's just year one that we're focusing on at the moment. So we've also, as well as the houses that will be developed by Hebridean Housing, we've also added in units that will be developed by partners like TIG, private developers, for example, and community groups through various things like the Rural and Island Housing Fund, Key Workers Fund, and the Mainstream Affordable Housing Supply programme. So there is a potential for up to 243 new houses to be developed over a 5-year period. But again, this is very much a holding SHIP, so don't hold us to that. And the only please take reference to the first year of that, where we are setting out what we think will be developed in the coming financial year in terms of affordable housing. So we'll be back in touch with you in September with a more detailed SHIP. We'll be having discussions with the Housing MIG over the summer to develop this, and we'll have a lot more detail for you later on in the year. But in the meantime, happy to take any questions you might have about the SHIP in front of you.
Thanks, Ian. Any questions from members? Ray?
I just wanted to catch up with what the carry forward, if any, of the last SHIP. What was 40-odd million, whatever. You know, what's the current situation with that?
Oh, I beg your pardon, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Chair. It's difficult to say at this stage because yes, members will be aware the resource planning assumption is an indication of what could be made available. That's not to say that all that money will be drawn down and spent within the course of a year or a 5-year period. So we work very closely with Hebridean Housing and the Scottish Government to try and maximise that drawdown if at all possible. But it depends on a lot of things, including the availability of land. We have to find land that is suitable for developing for housing and land that is available for purchasing to deliver the housing. We've also got to bear in mind HSP's capacity for borrowing so they can support the affordable housing programme as well. So although in previous SHIPs we've talked about over £40 million over the 5-year period, that's very much an estimate of what could be done on a full programme. But the reality is we've got to work around the criteria I mentioned earlier. So some years we might hit the full RPA, other years we might might be underspent. It's just the nature of the programme. And the other thing is it's obviously over a 5-year period, a rolling period, so it can change from year to year. So, but the key thing we try to do with our partners is try to maximise spend where at all possible. But some years it might not be possible, or it might not show us maximising the drawdown of the RPA. But we can certainly update you in more detail as when we produce the next SHIP on the likely, on the historic spend of actual spend against the RPA that's been allocated. And that should give you an idea of how the programme's looked over the last 10 years, for example.
The reason I'm asking it is to get an idea, and I appreciate you'll give us the information later on, but there was a fear, if that's a word, that we wouldn't actually spend what we were entitled to spend, or what we were, given the figures that we were given at the time. When we're looking around at different ways, and not just housing, but buying land and so forth. So do you have any indication if that was achieved? Or?
Chair. That's right. We did look, as well as a core programme of houses that HSP would develop, we were looking at a number of other projects that would be able to use up some of the money as well. So, for example, the empty homes work that TIG are doing, that's ongoing. And there are a number of properties mentioned in at the end of the appendix to the report as well, of work that they're doing in conjunction with our own empty homes officer to see what can be brought about. So these are all focused on rural areas as much as possible to try and support the repopulation agenda that the council has. And we're also looking to see if we can bring forward a number of developments that would help key workers as well. There's one development in Tarbert looking for accommodation for workers involved in the hospitality trade, where there's been a significant challenge in finding accommodation. So that would hopefully draw down more of that funding as well. But like I was saying before, it's all about trying to see if we can maximise the drawdown by not just using the core HSP programme, but looking to see how we can bring forward these other sources of funding. It is challenging and it does take a long time. For example, the Partnership Support for Regeneration programme, which is delivered in partnership with private developers, that's been something we've talked about for a number of years, but it has been very challenging to get developments that are ready to bring forward. We are hoping there'll be one that will that we can bring forward, the local developer and SSEN. So we're looking at that at the moment, and we'll have more information on that. Hopefully, in the not too distant future, we can let you know what likely to come from that. But it's just about trying to maximise the funding if we can. Being honest with you, the funding we get, it's a substantial amount of money on paper, but it is a challenge to spend all that money given the lengthy processes we've got to go through to identify land as well. It's more of a challenge in the rural areas. In and around Stornoway, it tends to be a lot easier to find land, but it's certainly a very long lead-in time when you're looking at a rural site and to draw down the funding.
Are you okay with that, Ray? Yeah. Yeah, thanks. I'll bring in Councillor McCormick before Councillor Seen. I dropped him out there. I'll get you next, Mustafa.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Thank you. This is just a speculative suggestion, and I don't know whether it's the kind of thing that might be involved in the report at a future stage. During the time that we were considering the development of a church in Steinish, part of the planning decision was that the people developing the church would also provide a pavement and a proper access onto the road. Now that was a positive thing from my perspective, but as you know, the development was turned down because the people weren't comfortable with it, that it fitted in with their village. My understanding is that the people would be very happy if Steinish Road became, a long line of individual houses. They would be quite comfortable with that. And what I was wondering was that, you know, if that sort of thing might happen, if that might become part of the thinking of this council in terms of that development, and if the landowner was amenable to the idea, whether each development that was happened along that road there would build appropriate access and pavement so that Stanish Road would be improved. It's been the bane of my life ever since I've been a councillor. And just the other day, I had yet another email from somebody saying I was nearly killed on Stanish Road today when I was walking my dog. It's a bad road. It's not got a proper pavement. It's full of potholes, and it's not a good road at all. But I understand, you know, that in terms of road enlargements and whatnot, it takes a somewhat lower priority than other areas. And I just wondered whether it could be written into the SHIP in some way so that as that area was developed, part of the planning process would enable the road to be improved. I don't know if I explained that very well.
Thanks, Chair. Unfortunately, if it was private housing, we couldn't use affordable housing funding for that. The only way we could draw down that funding if it was affordable housing in the mix. But if it was individual plots, for example, we couldn't contribute towards it. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Ian, and thanks, Councillor McCormack. I think the folk of Stanish might argue that the fact that the road isn't as good as it possibly could be has prevented some of the developments that they haven't wanted to see in the village. So that's an argument for another time. Councillor Mustafa.
Thanks very much, Chair. Ian, good to see you. Thanks. I was just looking at, we talked in the past about one of the delivery mechanisms that used to happen was the housing improvement grant, which obviously facilitate people to improve their houses and less pressure than HHA moving, which avoided houses being empty as well and being. So how come? I thought that was one of the things that was maybe we were going to explore to see if it was.
The old improvement and repair grant could be brought into the mix.
Yeah. In terms of obviously way of delivering a delivery mechanism, one of delivering housing.
No, unfortunately not. Members probably recall that we had to stop the improvement and repair scheme around about 2010, 2011, when funding was reduced in the overall allocation to the council. So since then, we haven't been able to award any grants for improvement and repair. The only grants from within that pot that we can still deliver are medical adaptation ones, and that comes from the core capital budget. But it is a great shame that fund is no longer available, because it did have a much wider use than just repair and improvement and repair grants. We could also use it for a range of things like service plots, off-road parking, lead pipe replacement and things like that. It covered a wide range of private sector housing things and had a very positive impact on the housing stock. But just incidentally, we're noticing quite a number of people coming to us as homeless because their house is falling into disrepair and they can't afford to do the house up. Yeah. And of course, there's no grants available for doing that. So it's a great shame we were sort of put in that position where we had to stop a very successful scheme due to constraints regarding the funding. But at the moment, all we have is a fairly small amount of money for medical adaptations. We don't have any money at all in that former budget. And even so, to chip in again, just to make an appeal, the medical adaptations grant budget is red hot at the moment. We've got a 5-year funding profile. We're likely to run out at the end of next financial year, so there's a real danger we'll have 2 years where we'll be breaching our statutory duty by not having that funding. So sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Thanks, Ian. That was the reason behind obviously talking about it in a way that, like you said, there's people presenting homeless, taking accommodation from HHP, leaving houses that with this grant availability could have stayed in their home longer, and obviously somebody else. I mean, is there any way of accessing some of the money available, from the Scottish government into
Thanks, Chair. No, unfortunately not. We've approached the Scottish Government and a number of housing ministers over the last several years to see if there was any chance of getting flexibility for using the money more effectively locally. We're constrained by the national framework for using this funding, but we tried in the past to see if there's any scope of getting that flexibility. That would have used up all the money quite quickly if we did have that funding flexibility, but unfortunately we've always been knocked back when we did make these approaches, and as far as we know the situation's not changed, but it's certainly something we could keep nudging every so often just to see if something did happen, but certainly at the moment there's no scope for that.
Thanks, Mustafa. I think your expectation of any joined up thinking is sadly misplaced. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and good to see Mr. Watson in the chair and hopefully recovering. I understand that rural housing is very challenging. I noted in the report that there had been discussions with grazing committees, but I just wondered whether we could go a bit further and actually get community associations involved in terms of trying to ascertain what kind of houses are required in certain communities, such as shared equity, rent to buy, even 2-bedroom, 3-bedroomed, in a way that's probably along the same lines as a participatory budgeting. That's quite successful in certain areas where you get communities round the table and discuss so that everyone moves forward, and I think it's quite a great opportunity. The other thing I wanted to bring up was, I know that it's been brought up many times about building projects and certain facilities and amenities sometimes get dropped as the project goes on, such as play parks. But we've got quite a number of houses going up in Blackwater, and I wanted to ask, is there any cross-departmental discussion in terms of services, in terms of the buses? Because I don't think there's going to be any extra buses and service in Blackwater, and I think that might be quite an issue for people, given the number of houses that are going up there and the people who will be reliant on transportation. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. With regard to your first question about consulting with community groups, that's a very good idea. I think it's a very valuable way of gathering information about shaping the local housing strategy, for example. And we are in the process of going out and starting another round of consultation with communities. We did a lot of work last year with Lewis and Barra groups, and we'll be doing the same with Harris and Lewis groups over the spring. And it is a really good way of getting some local knowledge about potential sites that we might have overlooked or might not have been aware about, and also to get a feel for the kind of housing tenures people want. Do young people want social rent, or do they want to buy a house? So it's really, really useful information. So we're looking forward to that consultation in the coming months, and hopefully that will help shape the next local housing strategy, which we're hoping to have ready for you in the late autumn before we go to Scottish Government. And the second point you raised about amenities for schemes, again, it's been discussed in the Chamber many, many times. It's just something that's becoming more and more of a challenge, given how tight tender returns are, how expensive it is to build developments. A lot of these potential amenities have had to fall by the wayside as the focus has been on the house itself. But we do try to get some sort of amenities into developments, like, for example, the Blackwater scheme you mentioned. There's landscaping being done. In fact, the Chief Planning Officer for Scotland was taking a tour around the development on Friday. So there's work there which will link in with the really nice park and walkway that's already in Newmarket. So you have a continuation from Tongue all the way up to the Blackwater houses. So some things can be done, but other things are making a development far too expensive and have to be parked. In terms of consulting on things like the buses, when we look at a potential site, we normally carry out feasibility work to see if the site's suitable for housing. But alongside that, there is engagement with other teams and departments in the Comhairle and other agencies to inform the feasibility study. So that includes things like the links to public transport, as well as things like road safety and things like that. So there is an element of that involved in the feasibility work that we do before work actually proceeds with a development. But as to the level of bus service, that's not something I can help you with just now, I'm afraid.
Thanks, Ian, for that. I think going forward, anything to do with additional housing needs to come with a consultation about providing transportation. And I think ever since old Charlie Nicholson had to show after his name was a Tufty Club cycling proficiency badge, now he's got a BEM, and in the interim period, he's been battling for planning to include some kind of play park amenities for any new schemes that we're building. And I don't understand how we're at a situation still where we can't insist on that provision being made across the board for any new housing applications. So we are where we are, but I think we need to, going forward, we need to insist on some kind of regulation on these things. Councillor McKinnon, we want on.
Just looking at us, we're moving forward with a ship from 2026 to 2030. Certainly coincides with the period that we're discussing earlier on with SSEN, and where they were talking about a housing legacy. And we're talking here about still a 55 to 45 split into rural areas. And though SSEN are more involved in the Stornoway area, clearly there's, as the developments move further away, you know, there's going to be work outside Stornoway, and the type of houses that that we need, do they fit into the type of housing that they could do for their workers. You know, I think there's work to be done there, and if part of the money could be done into rural areas, once you have a house in a rural area, you could attract families into those areas, which, looking at the thinking behind all the forward planning, is, you know, that would get more young folk moving in. Because one of the things we are seeing is, despite lots of housing being built, is a reducing population, you see. And that is a big problem. So we'd be looking at reversing the trend. But what I'm looking at is, as we move forward from the 26 to 2030, is more linkage with SSCN and the other developers and the type of houses that they want. Well, the type of houses that we want to have the legacy, will that benefit them in the type of housing they need for their workers? Because a lot of workers, you look about, you know, single kind of houses. That's all right in the Stornoway area, but if you're outside Stornoway area, you need a different class of housing. So I would hope that would link in more as we move forward, particularly from 2026 to 2030, that would get a win-win out of the legacy fund that they want to leave behind. And this could be the opportunity of doing it.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. That's a really good point. The discussions we've had internally have looked at obviously the ships are key housing document, and the work the developers are doing doesn't link in totally with it. But I think the two have to be seen in tandem, because there will be overlaps between the affordable housing being delivered to the ship and the work that they do, and the legacy housing obviously as well. So that's why it's been really good having the accommodation subgroup up and running. It's had a chance for the Comhairle partners to look at the bigger picture in tandem with the ship as well. So going forward, as we develop the next ship, although they won't be linked in with the ship, the housing need of the developers will be taken account of. We'll also use the sort of the general housing needs in the island to help inform the legacy housing that will come at come to the community as the progress goes on. So it's a very exciting time, and it's going to be a very interesting ship next year. Later on this year when we develop it, and there could be opportunities for the SSEN support to help in some way with site development as things go forward. But it's certainly something we'll keep the committee informed on, because it's going to be a challenging process, but also a very exciting one.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, it would be remiss of me to go on about anybody else's lack of joined-up thinking when we need to use our own joined-up thinking when it comes to building houses in rural areas and addressing public transport issues as well. Because if you want to persuade people to move out with Stornoway, you need to provide them with the access to the town public transport system. Okay, folks, the members agree the recommendations of 3.1. Yep. Heritage Museum Service Update Report by the Chief Officer Economic and Community Regeneration. We'll consider the report in public, but please note that the contents of Appendix 7 have been marked as private and should not be discussed in detail whilst we are in public. We'll take the Appendix 7 at the end of the meeting if needed. This report seeks the Coroner's approval of the Museum and Eilean policies and plans which require to be updated as part of the Museum accreditation return, and also seeks approval to disperse display cases to Comhairle. Colin George Morrison is available to speak to the report and answer any questions. I'm glad I didn't attempt that in Gaelic. Colin.
Tapel of Garriche. Sean Naishk Migadig go committee was speaking over Ashko Museum Gallery in the Halape, Barentach is awarst. Ham ik gleich jullie gewel nee peper van Kiantje is Naishk ach haunte van de committee Ion zijn goede kindje mis steeds dash go MGS. Maar als ik bij als je maar skippen de koppel dat zoals een vast gepleegd is ham large team jaak was was je de goede kale boeringen is een soeringen in januari zijn we hoe als je neer jema vestgrenje gewel Axel en dus het kreeg nog in opet als reacties als hoe data coherentjes een krinjoch in akin. Is je ke more alert als je een cyberattack. Zo misschien als je toch gezag je geen gema is we zijn zulig gefragd voor MGS in gaan 3 meersen immersion. Maar hoe de heen heeft nu display cases haminetje ik jaren ga 0.3 gandaishk ha hun jak en de kiesjen östchen agen jullie geleer geen kalkjaren had kwart ma ach gemiors nog had fast karanchen is gaan jullie dan dus ik ieder umugi son eerst een verboeien nasente Eilean hashin maraad kiesje nu de gaan nog is als een kiel kunt ook nog een jaar ruimaking son in je eerste gamma is maar als een molk en je kiesje een skele kunnen komen jaar 3 het vagnen jellen Tolletje questions me war. Tablef.
Any questions from members? Nobody online? Ray, it's first time today.
Well, I just want to recommend or congratulate the team on producing this report, which is, I don't know, 100 pages long, and say how much we appreciate it, seeing the conditions out at Marybank anyway. You know, it's really very difficult what the conditions that they're having to work under. And I was amazed at the amount of stuff that was out there and things that, you know, historical things that could disappear if something's not done about them. I mean, we could hardly even walk into the building. You needed your wellies up because it was up to your ankles. But inside the building itself, there was problems, big problems. Anyway, I just wanted to say that it's been a magnificent job. They're doing a magnificent job anyway, and I hope that things can improve, certainly with the storage. And I'm sure it's the same down in Newest as well. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ray. I'm just looking through the appendixes here and seeing disaster kits and hand pumps and buckets and mops. So I suppose that was part of the reasons there was a visit at Marybank. We are at a critical stage in keeping the museums and the heritage assets in prime condition, and it's a difficult one to manage. I don't know, does anybody have any other questions? We can agree to the recommendations at 3.1 and move on. We don't need to go. We can go back to 7 at the end if anybody's wanting to discuss it any further. Are we okay to accept the recommendations at 3.1? Yeah. Good. Lewis Museum Trust, point 8. Again, a report by the Chief Officer, Economic and Community Regeneration. This report seeks approval for the proposed transfer of the collection and other assets of the Lewis Museum Trust to Museum Eilean. Again, Colin George will speak to the report and answer any questions.
Uw tolletje klointje achel kusak mira en jashoch. Maar hoe de heen hanaik zo min nog roeter zo duur lakin. Is skippen voor gij Rus Museum Luis geoge aan een naked jug nog te hun. Ha ngren joge de we aan laven Museum Eilean koju. Die as het er zo'n nubbe toch pleonenisch. Is genial koskischen jo gadesen de warak yi. Er zo'n ngren joge show gwal wopen. Taplef.
Any members have any questions? Agreed. Yeah. We'll go for that one again since the microphone wasn't on. Outer Hebrides Economic Regeneration Strategy 2025 to 35. Report by the Chief Officer, Economic and Community Regeneration. This report seeks approval of the draft Outer Hebrides Economic Strategy from 2025 to 2035 prior to further consultation and finalisation. Anne Murray is available to speak to the report and answer any questions.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it was noted at the November series that it would be timely to update the economic strategy for the Outer Hebrides. So that piece of work has been started in the period up to now. There's a draft at the appendix to the report, and it's proposed to carry out a short period of consultation and come back to you with a final version in at the April series. So obviously happy to take any feedback today or through email or however you see fit. Hopefully no surprises there in terms of the key themes and the vision and the areas of focus in terms of the strategy and the proposed action plan. And it really just reflects that there's a lot coming through over the next period, and that we need to prioritise our activity and how we work with particularly external partners such as HIE and other stakeholders. So happy to take any questions or comments on the report.
The members have any questions? Mr. McCormack. Sorry, Mustafa. Sorry, Mustafa, you were first.
It's okay. It's okay.
Come back, Youngest.
Like go on.
When you go.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's just obviously thanks, Anne. It's in the early stages, and I was just going to ask, considering the actual decrease year on of the population, which hopefully this strategy is aiming at tackling and reversing. Looking at the activity, the three keys themes of the strategy, which are similar to the previous strategies, how are we going to do things differently this time to achieve our targets? Or and also in terms of measuring outcomes, when do we start? Are you going to wait till the end of the strategy, or when do we start to see if we've been successful in achieving what we're trying to achieve, or have we to change course? And the last point, just obviously I see that you've compiled the SWOT analysis. Have we identified any urgent action to start to tackle as soon as possible? Thanks very much. Sorry about complying everything.
Okay, thank you. So I'll come back on the measurement point first of all. I think what we've tried to do is just keep it quite straightforward in terms of the things that we'll measure. So it's quite easy to get hold of where we're at in terms of our demographics and also the GVA. So we can have that baseline really from the start of the the strategy and see where we get to by the end of the period. So just seeking to keep it quite simple, I think, in terms of the indicators there. You were asking about the SWOT analysis and what's the kind of priority. I suppose picking up on some of the discussions that members have had today, it's the energy piece and the coordination around that is of a reasonably high priority. It's an opportunity, but there's also a threat there if we don't get it right. So I suppose if there was to be any kind of level of prioritization, that would seem to be an area for prioritization. What was your other question? Sorry.
The three key themes of the strategy, obviously they're similar to. So how are we going to do things differently this time?
I suppose in a sense it's building on what we've got already and what we've done already, but there are new opportunities for us to get increased income in, for example, through the visitor levy. So there's new kind of legislation around that might be able to support us to invest in infrastructure. There's obviously the opportunities with renewables around community benefit and investment in our infrastructure there as a result of that. So I suppose where we are doing things differently, the other thing is just future. Things have changed in terms of external funding. So I think we need to look at all the different opportunities that are out there. For example, there's the National Wealth Fund, there's the Scottish National Investment Bank, and just, I suppose, not being so dependent on the traditional sources of external funding, but looking to what the other sources of investment might be. So perhaps that's something that we need to start doing differently in terms of where we're looking for financing.
Thank you. I mean, the SWOT analysis, obviously, just in terms of, since we highlighted or we identified the threats, especially some of the clear threats that you've identified in when you compiled the SWOT. What I was asking, is there any actions or project or plan that you've already identified to start going ahead with instead of just waiting for longer, till the strategy get approved? That's what I was seeing.
Yeah. So in terms of the threats that are there is some work ongoing around, for example, childcare provision. So we've had some Scottish Government funding for additional and kind of new approaches to childcare provision in Uist. There's something that we're about to pick up on in terms of digital connectivity as well. So we're due to have some discussions with Scottish Government on that as well regarding the rollout of R100. So we're not just sitting back in terms of the threats. There is work ongoing in terms of a number of these areas.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Thank you, Anne, for this report. It's a very good report indeed. And it pretty much tells us where we are and what our challenges are going forward. One of the things that I've been, it has troubled me a bit today. I mean, sitting through education, I realised that education doesn't have enough money from the Scottish Government to deal with all of the issues that it currently has. And so I wondered, obviously getting as much money out of education as we possibly can is going to be an issue for us. Do we consult with the Scottish Government in terms of this, or is this a lesser consultation position? Because I think, I just have this impression that if the Scottish Government is not going to give us a bit more in the way of resource, then we're going to be really challenged. It's going to make our lives so much more difficult. And I do realise that the points you make about the possibilities of positives coming out of future developments is something that we really need to concentrate on. But for basic, just day-to-day work that this council is doing, and education is the one that it really comes home to me on. Is the government part of bringing this to a satisfactory conclusion?
Okay. In terms of our engagement with officials in Scottish Government, I think we have quite good links with the Regional Economic Development team in Scottish Government, and I've got a discussion with their Highlands and Islands team next week. So we do have those linkages there with Scottish Government. We do always need to try and kind of emphasise and make the case for getting more resources locally to do what we need to do. They have, I think, very high expectations of what they believe we should be doing. But we, I suppose, are also saying, well, we're not sometimes adequately resourced in terms of our economic development service to be able to fulfil that. So those kind of discussions are ongoing. And then obviously when there are opportunities with politicians or whoever, we do put these kind of aspirations in front of them. So there is ongoing dialogue with Scottish Government and about the challenges we face on delivering against some of these aspirations.
Hey, thanks, Vice Chair. I think point 6.5 tells us about a delivery plan that we can monitor progress. I think everyone agrees on what's written out in that strategy. It's just how we get there, and look forward to seeing the actions that are detailed so that we can monitor how they're progressing. The other thing I was going to ask was, when I read the report, I'd only seen HIE as the main stakeholder. You're going to consult with other stakeholders and maybe suggest also that it goes to the OHCPP as well, if that's possible, because you get all the stakeholders there at one time. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Murray. Councillor Robertson.
Mi fechgin an as SWOT analysis ac rwt tymeicol glwysyd bar agus a wyechgyn sy'n mewn yn rhywun wedi te drug han o'n wyst a aarstach an y glwysyd bar y wyst caharad agus as y gyplyn as yn y fechgyn dich as y chiadol y tynes ffarai yn cael mac agus Nwn ha tarwyn bar yr ar gobi sech gys y chiad y farwch gach gyhwf National Insurance. Nes ten y cosgys yn y sienach y bwl ag y hwlad data sy'n i dianws na Eilean. Agus hain na gryg wam ys o'ch gwain. Agus am ys o'ch gydaib sy'n immer slati gan yn aw i harag doch ys y gyplyn gylw cent ys fichet sy chiad dag arstach ag ys bar.
And if you come back. Okay with that. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thanks, Chair. I was looking over a number of reports today, and each one refers to the reduction in population. And I think we're possibly taking a negative. We're starting off at the wrong point. There may be every one of these reports might be correct, and at the end of the day, in 10 years' time, we might be down by such and such a percentage and all the rest of it. But I think we should be looking at it more positively. And as I say, I might be wrong, but in the years to come, there's no reason why, with all the economic benefits that are supposedly coming our way, and a change in different things in the island, whether it's tourist levy and all the rest of it, I don't think we should be thinking too pessimistically about the population. And it could easily happen, and I'm not a prophet, that the population might be at the very least retained, if not increased. So I'm maybe a glass half full rather than half empty. And I think some of these things usually come over as a bit pessimistic, and because the government statistics or whoever statistics say that, you know, everywhere else in the country, the population is going to increase, and yet, you know, Western Isles is the one that's going to go down. I think if we start off thinking like that, you know, it'll only help to, you know, to reduce the population. I would just take a negative point of view. I may be wrong about that, but anyway. The other thing is, and I wasn't going to mention this, but I think today, Councillor McCormick has mentioned the Scottish Government 20 or 30 times. I could come back over it and see. Always negatively, in the sense that we've got to get in touch with the Scottish Government, give us more money for education, give us more. Yeah, fine, we've got to do that, and we've got to negotiate. But at the same time, the UK government have a lot to play their part in. With the two cap families, the winter fuel, the WASPy women's pensions, and Labour, the Labour Party in Scotland, they've abstained on the budget just now, apparently. So, you know, what use are they? I mean, you should be getting on to them to pursue the benefits for these islands.
Thanks for that, Councillor Mackenzie. So apart from housing, Gaelic School, converter station, offshore wind, onshore wind, the visitor levy, Deepwater Port 2, the spaceport, childcare, St Kilda College Visitor Centre, roads, population retention, museums, housing, pressure on tourism, council tax, planning resources and ongoing issues with budgets, I think reasonably challenged would be a fair assessment, Councillor McCormick. Thanks for that. Do we have any other questions? Councillor McInnes.
Yeah, you know, thanks, an excellent report, and certainly shows a vision of hope for the future. That's the way I see it. You know, there are many opportunities here in front of us, and I think we should grasp those opportunities. And one of the things I see is that all the land here is 77% community owned, and then we squabble about getting land and the cost of getting land. So land should be one of the cheapest things that we should get access to, you know, for house building or whatever. One of the things I'm looking to the next 10 years is, where's AI technology going to feature in all this as we move forward? You know, even in education, I think AI technology, I was speaking to a banker this week and they're only recruiting folk. The first thing they're looking at folk that are being recruited is what's their expertise in AI technology and moving forward. And in fact, some banker that lives on the west side of Lewis, I won't tell you what salary he's on, but it's unbelievable, you know, the way that the world is going, and the world is becoming a smaller place. And I think if we provide an environment that's good to live in and work in, we have lots of excellent facilities here. And I think a partnership approach in going forward and taking all our partners with us, and probably along, Councillor Murray made reference to community planning partnership. And I think as we move forward, we have to build on a partnership, because in this 10-year vision, we hope to have a single island authority that should be, you know, getting things more streamlined and doing things more effectively and cost effectively. And certainly, yes, the UK government must play their part in particular when we're talking about energy, which is in the next 10 years is one of the key industries, and how we develop green energy and move to net zero targets. No one ever in the Western Isles has seen investment ahead of us of nearly £7 billion. You know, that's a unique opportunity, and we must take advantage of that. And I see a vision for the future here that is good and should enhance and increase population in the islands. And we should move forward in partnership with all the other key players.
Yeah, I totally agree. Every single thing that I mentioned here, from housing to the Gaelic school, all the way through to council tax, planning resources, etc. I don't see them as an obstacle. I see them as an opportunity. And we need help to unlock all these opportunities going forward to leave us in a better place by the end of this term of the Comhairle or the next term of the next Comhairle. You know, there are so many profitable and worthwhile opportunities that will help us hopefully sustain and grow our population going forward. Because I think we can't afford to lose any more people. We need to make the Western Isles a more attractive place for everybody. And I think, you know, if we take advantage of all of these opportunities, you know, we can't but leave it a better place. So again, there are more opportunities than there are obstacles. So any more questions? Oh, Councillor MacLean.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee again, but it's a very good report and it puts it in perspective exactly where we are. I don't agree with Ray's first one. I was almost shouting to you to take him on a tour in your taxi, round the west side in particular, and to Bernera and to Uig. There is a declining population, but it's declining in the young. It's in the young, and this brings it out. And it's one of the weaknesses, an aging and declining population, she says. And that is a real problem if we think about it. How can we replace? I go to a place in Airduig, friend here knows where it is. I used to go over there as a young kid, and every single house was doubled. There was the old parents, and then there was the younger parents married in there. There is only one Indigenous person there now, and he's about 58 years of age. That is that's the stark reality of it. It's a stark reality if I go right up to Brainish, and you know yourself as you two there, but it's a stark reality. How do we readdress that? That is a problem. How do we redress that? It is really, we have to close schools. We've seen schools throughout our authority closing. There is an increase of population around the Stornoway area. Certainly, probably certainly. Well, you can see that with the school. That school was built for 800. It's now at 1,100. That's a scale we're at, and there needs to be almost an urgency. I said that about the energy, but there seems to be an urgency, and I'm glad, and you've encapsulated quite a bit of it there. And funny enough, why do I go to the weaknesses? Maybe it's the optimistic, no, I would say the pessimism in me that's going to the weaknesses, but they are actually real, and we've got to do something about it. And really, it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of intelligent people again there to get a solution, and it's going to take finance. And I agree entirely with whether it's from the UK government or whether it's from the Scottish government. But we've got to start, and we've got to go. But thanks very much for the report.
I agree with you, Councillor MacLean. I think things like R100, which affects the Western Isles particularly, you know, the role of digital technology going forward. We've got a situation just now over the next, say, 10 years, when we're dealing with this 7 billion investment. And this is the once in a lifetime opportunity we have to reverse the decline. And if we don't grasp this over the next 10 years, I'm not going to say we can kiss turning the whole thing around goodbye, but we certainly need to use it to build on what it is we have and to encourage people to come here and settle here and to grow the population. So we have this once in a lifetime opportunity, probably in the lifetime of this and the next Comhairle. So, you know, we have to use it to maximise the legacy and the ongoing benefit going forward from the bounty, the bountiful resources at our disposal. Councillor McInnes.
Just what Councillor MacLean was talking about there. I mean, you do get an opportunity, and we had a presentation from a company. You were at the presentation, Mounted Salmon. That was innovation coming in. It was the community that you were referring to, Uig, where they're looking out there for getting a development done. That either do it in the west, there in Lewis or in Shetland, And I think as a corner, those are the kind of projects that we should take forward. That we're looking at doing 200 jobs, taking in modular housing to put up for people that would work there, provide a factory there. Those are the very kind of things that you need in those communities. Who are the people that are going to be most opposed to it? The people that have moved in there and they don't want change. So you are at a situation now that those communities, it takes a lot to change those communities back to the communities that can be done, that the youth can thrive in. But that's one example of where there is an opportunity out there as we move forward in the vision for the next 10 years. And we should grasp it and make sure that Shetland will be offering all the carrots in front, everything will be in front of them to move to Shetland. But it's the kind of thing, when it does come, we shouldn't lose out and make sure that we progress it to the benefit of the Western Isles. If they don't come here, it shouldn't be from lack of effort from the corner.
Yeah, I think going forward, you're absolutely right. We have to be careful about what it is we resist. And with an aging population, maybe determined to keep things the way we are, we're in danger of possibly voting ourselves into, well, not voting ourselves, but, you know, community organisations voting to turn ourselves into a retirement home. You know, and we can't have that. We have to change the mindset around, and that we're a place for the young and for entrepreneurs to come and, you know, develop their businesses. So, you know, we have to become more attractive to a younger population across the piece. Okay, folks, do we agree the recommendation of 3.1? Sorry, Kenny, you've been waiting since 2:30, have you?
Not quite, but thanks anyway. No, just very quick, I was just going to add in that I was very pleased with the report, and I think our focus has to be on the weaknesses and the threats, the aging workforce, the aging population. If we don't create jobs that keep our young people in here, they're not going to stay. Tourism, yes, is a major employer, but that's not 12 months of the year work. If we're not creating jobs that are going for 12 months of the year, our young people aren't going to stay here. Our communities are going to die, and opportunities that Councillor McInnes was talking about aren't going to be taken. We have to be focusing on that. When I was reading this, I was doing some research, and apparently we have 1,000 people employed full-time from tourism in the Western Isles. Now, I don't know. I can't think where the 1,000 people are working just now in tourism. Some of the figures going out there are quite inaccurate. Maybe if it was meant to be full-time equivalent, but that wasn't what the article said. £65 million we make in tourism, but how much of that actually stays on the island? Where we inherit at least about over 70% of the self-catering owners live off the island. So a large chunk of that money goes off island. We need to be looking to keep the money that comes onto the island on here. And I think that's where we have to be focusing, not so much on tourism, but on the other industries that we have, the major employers, the agriculture, forestry, fishing, human health, all these that we've listed there in the thing. That's where the focus needs to be. Tourism is good, but unless tourism can be 12 months of the year, then it's not going to be the answer to our needs here, and it's certainly not going to keep our young people or attract people here to work 12 months of the year.
Thanks for that, Kenny. Yeah, I think we need as broad a base across our economy as we can have. You know, we need to spread it across various sectors, not just tourism, but, you know, entrepreneurial skills, engineering skills, AI skills, you know, the computing literacy skills, etc. You know, we need child carers, we need teachers, we need everything across the spectrum, so that we can get a mix to attract young folk to the island. Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, if I could come back on Councillor McLean, I agree with everything you said, and I'm realistic to know, you know, what the situation is. We had over 40,000 people on the Western Isles at one time. We had 4,500 people in Harris at one time, and now it's down to less than 2,000. Don't know, 1,700 or something, you know. So yeah, I'm realistic about it. That's what's been happening. All I tried to get over was that we shouldn't think that this is this is the way it's going, you know, and it's going to carry on down that way. We should really fight to get it back up, and it may not be 4,000, but I think we should think more positively.
Yeah, completely agree, Councillor Mackenzie, and not quite here, but the buck stops here. At the end of the day, this is the Comhairle. We can do a lot to change the dynamics of where we are with the island and the island economy and growth. So it's incumbent upon each and every one of us to play our part in making sure that the ideas that we try to bring to fruition benefit the whole of the Western Isles in terms of sustainability and growth. Do the members agree with the recommendation at 3.1? Thank you, folks. Point 10, item 10 is reports outstanding, report by the Chief Executive. Just for notice. Okay, right. Okay, the next scheduled meeting of the committee will be on the 29th of April 2025. Thank you very much, folks.